Good evening, and welcome to SlushHeap number 5. We are part of the Hangout10.com network. Hangout10.com is a number of shows like ours that bring you information in their field so that you can look them up and see what really interests you and get some good information. So with that, let me turn over the show to my co-host, Darcy, and she can make the introductions. Darcy?
Hello and welcome to SlushHeap.com. I have to say that tonight is a very exciting evening for me. The show, of course, is to discuss freelance and ghostwriting, something that is very near and dear to me, as it's something that I've been doing for several years now. But tonight, I think we have two gentlemen who can share even more insight than I can, and I look forward very much to speaking with the both of them. Directly to my right at the bottom of your screen is J.S. Matthew, freelance writer. And then, of course, our friends of the show, Jim Alt, and newly appointed friend of the show, John Rakestraw. And beside him this evening is our other special guest. This is Raymond Benson. He's a ghostwriter and author, and we will speak to him again in a moment. And then finally, my co-host Rudy, who introduced the show, and our technical guru at the end, Matt Frost. I think that it's important tonight to speak to what these men do, because this is a difficult profession. One of the things that I've noticed over the years that I've been doing it is that it's very difficult to find the balance of being known in the industry and not being too known in the industry, because after all, as a ghostwriter and freelance writer, you're supposed to work behind the scenes and let others collect the credit. So I think the fact that these gentlemen have been able to build a reputation while doing a job that is supposed to keep them behind the scenes says a lot about their character, and I have a lot of questions to ask, as I'm sure our audience does as well. Rudy, do you want to start off the questioning this evening?
Well, I guess the first thing I would like to know, again, let me explain to the two gentlemen that are here tonight, I am not an author. I'm a storyteller. And the story that I tell is the story of my life. You can't get any better than that. You know, you can't change it, you can't lie. Well, you can lie, but you're going to get caught in it. So my first question to both of you would be, can you explain the difference to me between freelance and ghostwriting?
Do you agree, Raymond?
You have to...
Okay, there. Have to unmute there.
Yes.
I think, yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, being a freelancer just means you don't go to, you know, some corporation and work for somebody else. You work for yourself. You work at home or wherever, and whatever jobs you're doing, it could be ghostwriting, it could be just tie-in writing, or it could just be writing for yourself, writing novels with your name on them. That's freelance writing too. I mean, so you know, freelance just means you're available to be hired.
And ghostwriting to you means?
Ghostwriting to me means that you're writing something, then somebody else's name is going to be on it. In other words, you write it, and you probably don't get credit for it. Now, you know, I mostly do, you know, I mean, I do my own novels, but I usually get credit for my tie-in work. My name is on the book, but it's usually a licensed, you know, like a novelization or working for a franchise of some sort. Ghostwriting is a different thing. Like you know, Sarah Palin's book, she had a ghostwriter write it, you know, and her name doesn't appear on the book.
Now, are we incorrect in saying? I mean, I have to say that when I was looking up, I went on a hunt and I looked up famous ghostwriters, if you can say that, because as a ghostwriter your name isn't supposed to show up. But I have to say your name is one of the ones that popped up several times because of your work on a specific novel, and I don't want to mention anything if I'm not supposed to. But am I incorrect in saying that?
For me?
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what it is.
Well, it's said over and over, and perhaps I'm wrong, but it actually even tied into your Twitter account in a couple different places that you had worked on a Tom Clancy book. Is that correct?
Oh, right. Well, that's pretty well known. I did two Tom Clancy Splinter Cell books, but I had to use a pseudonym. The publisher wanted me to use the pseudonym David Michaels, and that was because they wanted to continue the series, and if they had different authors write books in the series, they would all be David Michaels. So I think up to today, there's been 4 or maybe 5 David Michaels so far.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
So, and would you consider that different than ghostwriting then, or?
Well, if you turn onto the acknowledgments page, it thanks me. It has my real name on it. So I don't know. I guess you could call that ghostwriting, but it's more, it's tie-in writing with a pseudonym.
Okay.
So that's a little different.
And you've done, let's just say so, you've done a lot more books than that. That is what drew my attention to you, but I think that we should probably take a few moments to mention everything else you've done, and probably the stuff that you're most well known for is your James Bond work.
Right. And you could call that tie-in work, but my name was on the books. Right. I was the 3rd official author of the James Bond novels. That's right. And first American.
That's awesome. And I laugh because I looked in several places and was just trying to figure out how it was that they decided to select you as the next author of those. And everything I read was they automatically selected you. That was just...
Yeah, they came and offered it to me on a silver platter, which floored me. It was pretty amazing. Yeah, once in a lifetime kind of thing.
And how did you land yourself in the right spot for that?
I'm still pinching myself, but that was 15, 16, 17 years ago.
Wow. And you've done a lot since then as well.
Yeah.
I want to definitely get into your work. I know that right now you're out busy promoting Black Stilettos series, right, which we will definitely get back to. I guess that way it's a good place for authors to start if they want to be the freelance writers. One of the other things I'd argue is that authors very often, and I'm sure Raymond would agree with this, you get caught up in a lot of the promotional stuff while you're still trying to work on other projects, and you've got a lot on your plate. I think that one thing that freelance writers can do and often do for authors is to manage some of the other writing outside of the books. Website stuff, even borderline social media, things like that. They can help with that. We can take an idea that you have and formulate it into words and get it posted for you when you don't have the time to do that. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, well, publishing is... Oh, go ahead, JS.
No, please.
Well, I was just going to say, publishing has changed so much in the last 5-6 years that authors really have to promote their own stuff now. Publishers don't do it for you. And with all the social media and online stuff, Facebook and Twitter and all that, you've got to spend a good part of your day doing that. So time management is very, very important for freelance writing.
Raymond, do you think that applies when you're writing a book as well?
Yeah, but I'm more specialized. I think I'm primarily a fiction writer. So if I don't take jobs that would be like technical writing or something that I know nothing about. I write sometimes like movie reviews and theater reviews and music reviews because I know that stuff. I'm comfortable writing that stuff. So I don't take any jobs that I'm not comfortable with. Yeah. But mostly I'm hired to write fiction, and I write fiction of my own stuff, which is what I do when I'm not doing a freelance job or a work-for-hire job. I'll call it that. A work-for-hire job is really a novelization, what I call a novelization, or what we call tie-in work. There's an organization, and JS, you should maybe look into this. It's called the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. And it consists of people like us who write novelizations and tie-ins for other franchises. And their website is IAMT. Let's see, IMT. IAMTW.org. You know, you can go in there and read a lot of stories about how people have worked for different franchises. There's one guy on there, Max Allen Collins, who writes Mickey Spillane. He writes for Mickey Spillane's estate. You know, I did Ian Fleming's estate. There's guys that just wrote, like, you know, the new Star Trek movie novelization. I've been doing video game novelizations, like the Tom Clancy thing. I did Metal Gear Solid, Hitman, that kind of stuff. But this is all fiction. It's all storytelling, and that's my forte. So, you know, you're not going to find me writing, you know, about tree planting or something.
But I think it's interesting. I mean, I think that what you do is, I would argue, a different line of freelance writing, and that you're still hired to write a lot of this. I mean, and I'm sure
Yes,
that
exactly.
a lot of the ideas come from your head, but there's a basic idea there to begin with. Correct?
Right. Well, when you're writing, you know, tie-in work, you are working for somebody else. Somebody else's characters, somebody else's universe. So you do have to first ramp up to speed with learning about the universe. For example, my latest tie-in was, have you heard of the video game Hitman? I wrote the latest book based on the Hitman video game, but I knew nothing about the video game when I was hired to do it. They asked me to do it, and so I had to cram for about a month just watching videos of people playing Hitman and reading, you know, and reading their Bible, the Hitman Bible.
That job, right?
So I could, you know, learn the universe and the character. So, you know, you have to do stuff like that. You do have to do research. But then I was free to create my own story involving their characters. So, you know, it's creative, and yet, you know, you don't own it.
So when you're doing this, you're not going to get a percentage of any of the sales after a certain point. You basically work for the project, get paid, and then move on. Is that how it works?
Usually, yes. For the James Bond books, though, I did get royalties. It really depends on the franchise and the estate who's hiring you. You know, how they want to work it. But I've had both. Usually, these sort of tie-ins, like video games and movie novelizations, things like that, it is a flat fee. You get paid a certain amount of money, and that's it. And then they own what you wrote. But some, like the Bond books, I was paid in advance, and it worked toward royalties. So.
But you were mentioned in the Bond books, right? They were mentioned that you were the writer, right?
Oh yeah, my name was on the cover.
Right. That's because I remember that, because that's a little different. Whereas on the other ones, you might not be mentioned, but you're just somebody giving voice to whatever their characters are.
Right. Right. Usually my name is on them. Like the Hitman book, my name's on it. The Metal Gear Solid books, my name's on it. Just the, you know, actually just the Tom Clancy books, my name was on it. Everything else, you know, Tom Clancy's name is like huge, and he had nothing to do with it. You know, it's like, and you know, they try to fool people to make the Tom Clancy fans think that he wrote it. You know, sure. David Michaels is like really tiny down at the bottom of the cover. You know, by David Michaels. You know, and but Tom Clancy's name is really huge.
I noticed in a lot of the reviews, actually, that's one of the complaints people had, is that they thought it was a Tom Clancy novel, and it's not at all. But that's funny. I mean, I guess that actually brings me to another point, because when I was looking up, you know, researching a lot, I try to do research about all the different people we bring on the show. And I did. I noticed review after review after review that was excellent on these books that you've read, but there were like a couple in there that were like that. Like one of the people was complaining that it wasn't a Tom Clancy novel. And I wonder sometimes when you're a hired writer, when you're hired to write something, does it make it easier or more difficult to accept negative criticism?
Well, you know, a lot of these franchises have huge fan followings. Like, you know, James Bond especially, that's like Star Trek or Star Wars or any of that stuff. There, you know, it's worldwide fandom, And it's been going on so long, 50 years of the movies and 60 years of the books, that fans have preconceived ideas that, they bring their own baggage to the series. Everybody has their own idea of what James Bond should be. So you're going to get people that love your books, and there are going to be people that want to kill you. So, and it's the same way with the video game books. There's Hitman fans out there that, I got great reviews on one hand, and then on the other hand, there were Hitman fans that just thought I totally blew it. So, you just do the best job you can, and if you're pleasing the people who hired you, the franchise holders, if they like it, then, you're okay. And then you just have to go with the flow as far as what the fans think.
So do you read them? I mean, do you go through and read some of the comments, or do you just let it be?
Some people say don't ever read your reviews, but come on. I think everybody reads the reviews, especially like when you go to Amazon, you see that's the slush pit of reviews, because you get some intelligent reviews, people who take the time to write something constructive and really good, and then some people that use one line to just trash you and kill you, You have to take it with a grain of salt. You got to have thick skin.
So, well, gentlemen, I'm going to kind of wait till last, because I don't know if they give you my background, okay? But
I think I briefly mentioned it.
Briefly, okay. Yeah. Well, let me put it to you this way.
I don't remember it.
Okay, good. James Bond preceded me into the movies, at least, by 4 years. Of course, I've never been into movies yet, but when I was finally recruited, I thought that I was being recruited as James Bond's right hand, and boy, were they lying to me, because James Bond is just such a character, that I was a character, I thought, but not the same way, I had to earn my stripes. For 6 years, I was a spy of a different kind. I was an airborne spy, you could call that. Okay, I was like Powers, kind of, except I never got caught on that. He did. He made a mistake, and usually in that particular field, and I'm sure James Bond, if he gets enough books written, one of these days, he'll make a mistake too. That's just human nature.
He makes lots of mistakes. He's made some mistakes in my books.
Well, but the thing is, he still lived through it.
Yeah.
Now, I had a ghostwriter, and I'm sure it was Darcy, and I gave Darcy credit on the book. Now you're telling me I didn't have to, but it's a little bit too late, But the thing is, we're in the process of writing book number 2. We broke my career up into 2 different portions. One was the military, and I'm proud to say I was recruited into this job by Lyndon Baines Johnson when he was president. I don't know if you ever did any research about when spying started in this country, but it started with George Washington. He had his own gang that went out there and got him the information he deemed necessary to win that war, and that has never stopped. Of course, the only place you're going to find the real answer, does it still exist today, is if you actually ask a president, or you look into the book of secrets that the presidents each get when they take office. If you don't have access to them, you don't really know. But I was recruited by Lyndon Baines Johnson, and unfortunately was fired by Ronald Reagan, because I made a mistake, and there it was. I lived through it, but I exposed myself. Not that way. I happened to be stupid enough to had a picture taken of me with a known agent, and that was just the dumbest thing ever. And I was summoned, and I was told that my services were no longer needed. But it wasn't until my second part, when I went to the civilian end of it, that I kind of lived that life of James Bond, on a little smaller level. I was most of my 20 years, I was in China, mainland China. I was there as a German, not as an American, because I'm born German. I still have a German citizenship, and so therefore they thought I was a German businessman. And why do you speak the English so well? Because I do business with the Americans too, you know. But we were there for a different reason. And when I showed up, they have a way of looking at you like, what is he really here for? And I thought I covered myself well, but thank God I didn't cover myself all the way, because what they did send was an agent after me, a very young Chinese lady, which is actually Mongolian, to find out who I really was. And I played that extremely well. You know, my wife didn't know it for some 25 years, but she never found out who I was. And like I said, unfortunately, one day I was in Taiwan, and we went to Chiang Kai-shek's birthday party, and we were taking pictures of ourselves, and each time one of us was not in the picture. So finally this little Chinese man said, "Do you want me to take a picture of all of you?" We said, "Sure." So he did. "Well, do you mind if I take one with my camera?" "No, go ahead." Well, that was the mistake, you know, because the one person they knew was an agent, a Chinese naval agent, then basically exposed all the rest of them. And within the next 2 days, we had to finish our job and go home and be unemployed.
So, Raymond, did you talk to someone like Rudy before writing the book?
That was my question. Thank you.
Well, yeah.
Thank you.
I was going to say, Rudy, as soon as you mentioned the Mongolian lady, I thought you were going to get into some kind of, you know, honey trap kind of thing.
Well, no, I wasn't going to give the book away yet.
But yeah, no, I actually, back when my very first book was a nonfiction book about the history of James Bond and the biography of Ian Fleming. And that's kind of the reason why they asked me to do the books, was because I'd written this book called The James Bond Bedside Companion. This was back in the 80s, early 80s. But I went to England and I interviewed, you know, Fleming was a spy. He was the second in command of naval intelligence during World War II.
Okay.
And and he had a lot of friends who were spies. So some of them were still alive, and I did interview them. I knew some guys that were in the OSS here, which was the precursor to the CIA. So I talked to them a lot. So yeah, you know, I had to do some research. You know, it's fun. You know who Tony Mendez is, right? From Argo.
Am I supposed to admit to that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know who he is, right? The character that Ben Affleck played in Argo.
Yes.
Well, I saw Skyfall, the new James Bond movie, with Tony Mendez.
Oh, okay.
We were sitting together.
That's funny.
That's
that was kind of cool.
And actually, I mean, you actually have, I think, probably a few humorous stories, probably, but we actually asked you, as one of our questionnaires topics, what the funniest moment in your career was, and it actually came down to research. Do you remember what you wrote about the underwater tunnel?
the tunnel. Yes, I loved it.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. This was in Japan, and I was writing the 6th James Bond book called The Man with the Red Tattoo. And the Seikan Tunnel is a passenger rail tunnel that connects the main island of Japan with the northern island, Hokkaido. And it's like a mile underwater. It's the longest rail tunnel, and it doesn't stop in between the two islands. But I needed to get down into the tunnels because I wanted a chase, a foot chase through the tunnels, and I wanted to get down there so I could write about it accurately. So JR Rail, the people that run the railroads, they took me down there, and my guide and me, and I did map out the chase. And since we were continuing our journey up to Hokkaido, they arranged for the train to stop in the middle of the ocean so that my guide and I could step onto it. And you know, you should have seen the faces on the passengers, the Japanese passengers, when the train stops when it's not supposed to, and then the doors open and these two white guys come on. You know, and so they were staring at us the whole way. You know, the rest of the way, like, who are these guys? days.
I love that.
Well, you have to understand that their culture is so different than ours and so regimented. So when something is out of place like that, you know, they can make the best of it. They're a very honest culture, you know, and I always tell people that if they have a child that's born with a club foot, then the child's name will be Clubfoot. You know, that's at least how the Chinese do it. So I know when I was there, I did not get into a tunnel, but I remember going to the Chinese Hollywood, where they do all their movies in China. And I can remember there were children going around, you know, I guess as a class trip that day, and every time they would see me, they would start laughing. And I was like, okay, enough is enough, you know. And I asked my guide, what's going on, you know? Well, because you're so large, you know. Well, I thought, you know, it was height, but I'm large. I'm 275 pounds. So they thought that if I was a sumo wrestler, a white sumo wrestler, you know. And it just doesn't sit well with us because we don't want to be laughed at. But yet, you have to understand, when you're there, you have to take those kind of things. So, oh yeah, no, like I said, it's interesting. I always was wondering, I mean, I guess all the stories that you have in your James Bond, are any of them based on actual missions?
Not my books, no.
Okay.
Fleming, I'm sure, you know, he used a lot of experiences that he had during the war, and he, you know, embellished them quite a bit.
Okay.
But no, everything since then, especially in modern times, like the John Gardner books and my book. My books were during the Pierce Brosnan era of the movies.
Okay.
And my directive from the Fleming estate was actually make your books more like those movies. You know. So,
okay. Okay.
So they were pretty fantastic and had a lot of action, and but I did try to base them in reality as far as a real place that was a hot spot for Britain. Like the first book takes place in Hong Kong during the handover of Hong Kong to China. So I did go to China, by the way, doing the research. So things like that. You know, fantastic things happen in the books, but they're leveled in reality. I use real places, real hotels, real restaurants, you know, that kind of thing.
And if you want, real quick, I know that we're getting close to time, but I would love to hear a little bit more about your Black Stilettos series, because I know that's what you're pushing now.
Yeah, it's going to be a 5-book series. 3 of them are out now. The next 2 come out next year in 2014. It's being developed for a television series, so we're keeping our fingers crossed there. It is about a feminist before that word was in our vernacular. She is a young woman in New York City in the late 1950s who puts on a mask and a costume. She goes out on the streets and fights crime and social injustice, calls herself the Black Stiletto. She's active for 5 years and then mysteriously disappears. And then she becomes a legend over the next 30, 40, 50 years. Nobody knew who she was, but there's comic books about her, action figures, things like that. We cut to the present. We've got a grown man taking care of his elderly mother in a nursing home. She has Alzheimer's, and he discovers that she was the Black Stiletto. So it's 2 parallel stories, one in the present and one in the past.
Excellent. That sounds really good, actually.
If you go on on my Google page or theblackstiletto.net, there's some videos. I've got 2 videos that kind of set you up for it, and there's also a free teaser short story that you can download for free, and all kinds of stuff on the website.
Say the website again.
theblackstiletto.net.
Excellent. Okay, and we'll make sure again that we try to include all these below the video so that when people are watching it, they can reference it below. So we'll make sure to do that.
You say you actually have videos that we can watch already?
Yeah. Yeah, I created them, yeah. One was shot in Hollywood.
I gotta go see this.
Yeah,
That's good.
Looking forward to it. These men are on social media, so you can find them if you have a direct question for them. I know Raymond's fairly new to Google+, but he is on Twitter, Facebook as well. And our good friend J.S. Matthew is on Google+, and has been for quite some time, so he is easy to find here. So please, if you have any questions, let us know or let them know, because they'd be more than happy to ask or answer. Sorry. And before we go, I do have one more thing that I'd like to say. I read a book this past weekend that I want to highlight, because I've been promising for quite some time to read this book, and I was very pleased with how good it was. So for all of you that haven't read it yet, Titanic Deception by Mr. John Rakestraw is a fabulous book. He and his wife co-wrote it, and I was very, very impressed. So I thought that I should...
She was more like a ghostwriter for that, really.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But I gave her credit because, you know, she deserves it. Besides, you know, she's my wife, and
yeah.
I have to sleep sometime. No. No, she's a fabulous writer, and these guys were marvelous. You know, to me, the guy who writes James Bond novels is like a dream come true for any guy. And then, of course, J.S. over there, who actually tries to make a living at this, is amazing, because, you know, it's a hard task. It's a beautiful task. It's a wonderful task. But just remember, even Shakespeare is thought that somebody else ghostwrote all his stuff. So you can be as famous as Shakespeare, and they'll say somebody else wrote it. So, yeah, it's a tough road out there.
You never know.
Yeah.
Well spoken. Well spoken. I want to know one thing. How did you get the two pictures you have on your? Are they pasted on your wall back there, or?
No.
They're on my screen.
They're actually on the screen. It's a magic trick that I put together. Yeah.
Well done.
It's called. I'll do it for you, Rudy. I'll make it happen for you. You want it? I know that Jim can do it for you too. Yeah. It's magic. It's magic.
Magician, John Rakestraw. Well, gentlemen, I have enjoyed it this evening, and I know that we are out of time. But I just want to say again, I really, really appreciate being on the show, and we hope to have you back in the future, because you were both very informative, and I know that the people that watch this show, it really matters to them to have this sort of information. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
And Rudy, I will leave it to you to close out the show, but thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You took all my words away. No, seriously, I really enjoyed it tonight. I mean, it was my dream, I guess, one day to speak to somebody that actually wrote about my life almost, and I guess I got about as close as I could with Raymond. Maybe what we can do is we can get you in as a ghostwriter to my ghostwriter, and we can make the second book even better. How's that? But we'll put your name on it. I'll guarantee you that. So, and if we have anything that we need written, now I know where to go. JS is the man to go to. You know, all I got to do is give him the keywords, and he'll run with it. So that's even better than, you know, I can just shut up after that. You know, like I said, the reason I don't write, because they tell me to be an author, you have to write short sentences and short paragraphs, and nothing in my life is short, believe me. You know, I tell stories. You know what? And John is shaking his head. John and I are from the same tree.
Oh, yes, we are.
We can take 3 words and turn them into an hour-long story. You know, there's no doubt about that. And I'm proud of it, too. You know, no doubt about that. So, but I really want to thank you again for being here, and hopefully we can have you on again, and we won't have the problems that we had tonight. Maybe Google will get all their hiccups out of the way. By the way, I'm going to patent that hiccup thing, you know, because it only happens to us, you know, it seems like. But really, it was enjoyable tonight, and I thank you very much, and hope to see you again soon.
Likewise, thank you.
Thank you.